Hello and welcome to the Podawakens presents Chronological Clone Wars as we watch the Clone Wars in chronological order. If you didn't understand what the title was, that is what we're doing. Um, and we discuss them in batches of episodes each week. So this week is our fourth week, and we are talking the Malevolence Arc. Nailed it that time. The season one episodes 2 through 4 are what we're talking about this week. So I forget how we kind of do this each time, but I guess let's just get your general thoughts on the arc as a whole, this Malevolence arc, and what you thought.
Yeah, I I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it at first, but I really do start to feel like as I get into like the second episode of an arc, I'm like, okay, this makes more sense, and it gets a little bit more exciting for me. I felt like the first episode for all these arcs are kind of like, okay, I kind of see where they're going. I like that it feels very Star Wars, but I do feel like it, especially these 3 episode ones, because we've not really done much of the 3 episode arc kind of thing, and I think a bunch of them coming up are 3 episodes. Still feel like that second one's really where it starts to pick up. But overall, I really did. I like the arc of this. I think that it shows you interesting dynamics that we get from characters that we know, but also don't really know.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I was really busy this weekend, and I just didn't watch. I'm just kidding. I watched these, but it was like, uh, I was almost like dreading it, and then like not in like a bad way, I guess, but it was just like, oh man, we got so much like stuff I gotta do, and I gotta find time to watch these 3 episodes.
Yeah,
And then I watched them Friday night, and then yeah, probably about the time we hit that near the end of the first episode, second episode, you're like, all right, yeah, I'm digging it.
yeah,
I'm digging what's going on. Um, actually, I probably think the first one might actually be the better episode, with it being Plo Koon and kind of focusing on him. But yeah, we can kind of dive into it here. I have the Disney Plus synopses,
synopsize.
synopsize.
I have no idea.
Rising Malevolence. The Jedi face a devastating new separatist weapon, and this one was written by Stephen Melching. He's going to write all 3 of the ones we talk about. And Dave Filoni directed the first one, and Brian Kalin O'Connell is who directs the second 2 of the episodes that we will talk about. All right, so this one, Plo Koon is sent on a mission here to find the menace. Right, this is like a what we will find out is the Malevolence, but nobody really knows at this point what is taking out these Republic ships. It always leaves no survivors. And Logan, I have some questions for you that I didn't know if I was going to dive into, but I think I'm going to dive into this now. Would you want to be a Jedi? Because as soon as anything goes wrong, the council was like, well, that sucks, but they're dead. Nothing we can ever do about him. And then when Anakin goes out of his way, they're like, Anakin, you're not obeying orders as you're trying to save one of our fellow Jedi Masters. Please leave. Now, I get it that they're like, well, he was. Nobody's ever survived, so we don't want you to get in the wrong hands because then that leads to maybe us losing more than just Plo Koon. But I mean, it kind of seemed kind of cold from the Jedi Council to be like, yeah, that guy that's been in some of the actual live action movies in the background and is a fairly popular character, he's probably MIA and probably dead, but we'll just never find out. We'll just leave him there.
Yeah, I like that. I like that thought because I do. I feel like, and especially because he was Jedi Master to Ahsoka. So,
Well, yeah, he's the one that
well,
found her.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's the one that found her. So he, I don't know. It's funny because you would think that they all have these like I guess you're not supposed to really have feelings as Jedi, so maybe that's it. Maybe you don't have
Mhm.
feelings. You just you kind of protect each other's back like there's a Jedi code. But then as soon as it goes off script, they're like, "That's okay, they'll die."
Yeah,
It is quick. Like Order 66 makes sense now. Like they probably were just like, "Oh, that one's dead. Well, we'll move
yeah,
on."
yeah. So what? Yeah, why was it so devastating? Anakin killed all those kids. They'd
I
be
don't
like,
get
"Well,
it.
that
Yeah,
sucks. That's
right.
it." Um,
Jedi Council has no heart. That's what it's starting to feel like.
what it always feels like to me when we get these type of things is I'm always surprised when Yoda says that kind of stuff because I'm like, dude, you're like
Yeah,
the guy, right? Like you are the Jedi Master.
right.
Like,
You're
uh,
the gaffer. You got to make the
yeah.
choice. Yeah,
And when
rally
he
the
says
team.
stuff like that, I'm like, come on, man. You probably
Yeah,
trained Plo Koon at some point because Yoda's
right.
900 years old. Uh, when like somebody like Mace Windu says it, I'm like, all right, yeah, it makes sense, right? Like Mace is kind of like a a
Yeah,
jerk in some of these episodes and I guess episodes of film as well. Like episode 1, I feel like he's Mace Windu's a jerk. I think he kind of comes across as a jerk in all three, actually, especially when it comes to Anakin. And I don't know. I just thought they'd be like, well, we have to go rescue him. Like, okay, they're sent to rescue senators at times, but when it comes to rescuing a fellow Jedi, they're like, well, he had it coming. It's kind of odd, but just something that stuck out to me. Okay, also, interesting. The ship is just turning out to have a massive, what they call ion cannon. It's pretty much a massive EMP, and this EMP is going to. The reason why nobody can ever survive is it takes out all of the electricity, the power. The ships start to lose power, which means the people are going to die. And then they also have like this backup of this like droid ship that goes out and will cut open the escape pods and all that kind of stuff. And that's where a lot of the tension comes from in this episode is we're in this escape pod. We've seen them kill 2 other escape pods and now they're coming for us. And can Anakin and Ahsoka get here in time to save them before the droids, kill Plo Koon and the rest of the clones?
yeah. That it was interesting to me because I guess all the battle droids that we see, right, are either on spaceships or like on
Yeah, interesting how
planets
they're
when
like
they're
chilling
fighting.
on the in space.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know they did that. I didn't know they. I mean, I guess I figured they'd have to get somewhere using ships, but it was shocking to me. It kind of felt very like I almost thought it felt like Marvel, like when the Guardians would hide on like rocks and places were being destroyed. It kind of had that similar feel, or even like an abandoned. What's the place called where is it
Nowhere.
is it nowhere? Yeah,
The place
I
that
think.
the collector is at, and they've now have their
Yeah,
like home base. Yeah.
right. So I don't know. It kind of felt similar to that, and but this is way ahead of that. So I don't know. It was pretty cool. I've never seen battle droids in space and operating in space like that. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably haven't seen a Jedi do that either, but actually we just
Yeah,
watched Ahsoka where she does that.
yeah,
But now, of course, Plo Koon doesn't have to wear like a helmet because he's got like his breathing mask, so he's
yeah.
able to survive out there for a little bit. He says he's like, I can last a little bit. Um, and then he, is going to uh, have a. I don't know. It seems like at times he was kind of like exasperated a bit, like he was struggling out there. But I was actually surprised the clones could survive with just their helmets on. Like,
Yeah,
I feel like those clone helmets are not secure enough to be like, yeah, let's risk it. Let's go out there and you know see how it goes. But yeah, so that is some interesting stuff there from Plo Koon and them. So Anakin does send the rest of his group the way that they were supposed to, but then just him and Ahsoka are going to be the ones to go and look for Plo Koon, and it works out. They are able to locate him. Sorry, they are able to locate him, but it just they couldn't make it in time, really. Like, if Plo Koon wasn't a Jedi that could last by having
Hmm.
his mask going out and stalling, like, all these people would be dead. So
It's
really, Anakin and Ahsoka didn't do much except for actually bringing them into their ship.
it was weird to me. Like Ahsoka was the one that senses him, and Anakin's like, "I think we're done here."
Yeah,
He
yeah.
doesn't seem like one that he's so powerful. It's like, how did he not? I don't know. It was weird.
I'm guessing just the connection between
I think
Ahsoka
so.
and Plo Koon.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah, but you know what? This is a very interesting batch of episodes to watch in a row because there's actually going to be some similar themes into next week. I'm not going to spoil any of that right now, but next week there are some similar themes of like we talked about connection, right? Having connections with people or objects, and pretty much scolding Anakin for going out of the way to like save something. So pretty interesting that this is not a fault of us watching these chronologically. We're kind of in the point right now where we are just watching as released right now until like almost the end of season 1, I think. So just interesting that they wrote some of these episodes together. I don't know if it was meant to be a common theme or just something that happened to come up when they were creating plots. But there you go. So I wrote Plo Koon as a badass in my notes. This is from him going out there and like taking them out, and then also just being able to like use the Force
Hmm.
so well. Where like I don't know if I would trust that if I'm a clone, but Plo Koon is just like, I'm gonna pick you up, I'm gonna chuck you on the other side of the ship here, and I'm gonna turn you around and you shoot the droids, and then I'm gonna pull you back, and I'd be like, I don't know, man, I don't know if I'm gonna do that.
It's a lot of faith. It's
Yeah,
like, okay, I trust you with my life. Otherwise, you're going to shoot me into space and I'm going to die.
he starts picking me up, and I'd be like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, right. Oh, put
Because
me down. Put me
all
down.
it takes is for them to shoot Plo Koon, and he gets
Yeah,
distracted, and he's like, "Oh," and then you're gone.
yeah,
You're just gone in the space. But I guess at that point too, you don't really have any other chances. Um, but yeah, there's some tense scene. There's a tense scene at the end here because once Anakin does save Plo Koon and them, they have to turn off all of the electricity because the malevolence returns, right? And Grievous and Dooku are looking to see, are there actually any survivors? And they forget to turn off the medical droid here. And the medical droid just comes up like, "Hey, is everything all right?" And they're like, "Oh no, like that's going to draw them to us." And then they have to kind of escape as the ion cannon is firing its EMP, and they just make it out of there. I really liked this scene because I thought it was rather tense for a for an animated show.
yeah. I just, at what point does Dooku look at Grievous and go, "What are you doing?" Like,
Yeah,
I think we
that
get some of that
is,
this episode, but it's like, what is Grievous doing? Is he an idiot? Like,
it's definitely something that I was thinking about. Like, okay, and I get it because they have to introduce Grievous
yeah,
and build him up for Revenge of the Sith in this, but I mean, he comes across very incompetent in this show.
yes. Which he's not in. He's not in.
No, I mean all
What is
the
it?
lightsabers he has are from
Right,
Jedi's he's killed, and in
right.
this he's like, oh shucks, lost again.
Yeah,
And that's something that they have to do in the sense of, again, there's going to be times where we talk about this in this show where Anakin has to have some sort of excuse to have never met Grievous before, because in episode 3 when he saves the Chancellor, and Grievous like says, General Skywalker, you're like shorter than or like you're nice to meet you finally or whatever, and then Anakin's like, you're shorter than I expect or whatever. Like, that is something that once that was written in episode 3, they're like, okay, well now we can never have these two interact.
yeah,
And now there's going to be times where they can interact like this, where it's like, okay, he's on a spaceship, he's
right,
on another ship. They can hear about each other, but they just can never come face to face. And we'll
right.
see more of that throughout the Clone Wars as well.
I think it's a great idea though. Like, I mean,
The bad thing is
I,
it does lead to what you were saying, where he comes
yeah,
across very incompetent because he can never actually face Anakin.
right. Because when he faces Obi-Wan, it's totally different.
Yeah, yeah, he does come across like a little bit more.
Right.
Uh,
Like a badass
yeah,
almost.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so that'll be it for Rising Malevolence, and we'll move over to Shadow of Malevolence. This one was this one's a little darker. This is called
yeah.
Anakin leads a strike on General Grievous's warship. This one's a little dark. And I wrote one of the first things I wrote in my notes here was Dooku is way more evil in this show than he
Mhm.
is in the movies. Like when we see him in Attack of the Clones, he's trying to plead with Obi-Wan, right? And you kind of
Yeah.
get where his ideals might be. When he's like, "Hey, look, I trained your master. He kind of shared some of the same ideas I did. Let's just like take out the Sith Lord together and we'll, be cool." And Obi-Wan doesn't believe him that there's a Sith Lord in charge of the Republic or, deep in the Republic. So he's like, doubting him on that. And you're kind of like, well, I feel like people always say this kind of stuff. Dooku is like an idealist, right? Like he's a little
Yeah.
bit more of like a, I don't know. He saw that the Republic was failing and he kind of jumped on. Okay, sure. But in this show, he's like, let's take out the clone medical facility
Yeah.
that people are healing at. We'll take them out. And I was like, holy crap, this guy is like really evil.
Yeah. I think it's like something that's off limits in most wars. It's like the
It's a
wounded.
war crime, right?
Yeah, like it's intense because there's 60,000 patients, which is a lot. I'm like, gosh, these are brutal wars that are happening. If there's already 60,000 patients, I mean, some of them obviously might be from other things like training and stuff, but man, to target a medical center, that's gutsy. That's like very Jokerish. I mean, it feels very dark and twisted. Like he's got no feeling for just destroying these clones.
Yeah, it kind of took me aback a bit because it's not how I remembered Dooku.
Yeah.
Like because look, like I said, I've watched the show once through. I've probably watched a couple episodes over again. I've not like revisited this episode and some of these Dooku ones where he is like way more morally wrong than
Hmm.
what you would say is like politically like what is the word I'm trying to say here? Almost like a he saw that the Republic was letting him down. He didn't see that the Jedi were doing, things correctly because he's a little bit more of a maverick like Qui-Gon Jinn. And so it's almost like seeing Qui-Gon go dark is pretty much what I
Yeah.
equate this to. But Dooku does have a little bit more of a dark side in him from, just I guess other things, and he's at this point been corrupted a bit. But yeah, I was like, oh my god, he's going after medical center. That's kind of dark. Um, so Anakin and his crew from the last episode, they've kind of regrouped, and they're like, all right, look, we got to go take down Grievous, and somehow they're able to take a shortcut to get there before Grievous does. And this shortcut is going to lead them in through some space creatures like eels or something, right? It's kind of what it looked like.
Hmm.
Almost like the Purgils, something like that. And we've gotten to know a few of these clones, Matchstick and Tag, I believe their names were. And yeah, they're not long for the world here. They're going to die when they're approaching Grievous's ship. And it leads to the point of Ahsoka kind of has to pull Anakin back a bit when they're approaching this ship. Because Anakin wants to go at the bridge and just take Grievous out, right?
Yeah.
And they're starting to lose a lot of their numbers, and Ahsoka's like, only you can do that. Like all these other people are pretty much going to die. Like we're not going to be able to make it. And he decides to pull back, and they start firing at the ion cannon instead, which will make the ship go a little. It'll take out their main weapon. They overload the cannon, and the cannon is kind of not functional at that point. But yeah, Plo Koon, he once they were going in that shortcut, where it was like, oh boy, I've heard of this shortcut. Anakin had heard about it from when he was on Tatooine as a slave, and heard pilots talk about it. Those deep space pilots that always talked to him and told him about angels, right? Um,
Mhm.
and he, I somehow remembered this for like 12 years, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll use this shortcut that I happen to be by. Let's go."
uh,
And he goes through it, but then he didn't realize that there was these creatures there. And Plo Koon, once he heard the name, was like, "Oh my goodness!" And one of the animals did hit, I believe it was Matchstick's ship, and he was able to
mhm.
hold on for a bit. But when it came to them pressing at Grievous's cannon, is what kind of caused him to lose control and end up dead. But any surprise here by the amount of clones we meet and get names to that have ended up dead? Like, are you surprised? Like, oh, geez, they're killing off some of these people that I'm starting to get to know or like, or that they want me to feel sorry for.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like just the Shadow Squadron as a whole. I mean, I was like, it it makes sense though, because I guess you got droids, so like this makes it even more like, oh my gosh, because I always felt like I always feel when when villains are able to kill people that you care about, I feel like the stakes are higher in a movie. So, for instance, Thanos in Marvel, I think the
Spoilers.
more he kills, yeah, there you go. Spoiler alert for the movie that's been out like what 6 years now, 7 years. That hasn't been that long. Anyway, whenever a
5.
character whenever a villain kills people that you have attachment to, it makes the stakes higher for the movie, and it feels more like we really need to take him down. Like I've always felt that way, and like Kylo Ren, like taking out Han Solo, like that's ultimately like where you're going. Okay, I don't like Kylo Ren. Like that needed to happen. Um, you need to have these emotions attached to these characters that are getting taken out. So the more we can build up and take out, the better, because it just feels that way, right? There's a lot of TV shows that I think have been more successful than others because uh, they don't really have those attachment to main characters. Game of Thrones, for instance, like I feel like 100%. You got a favorite character, good luck, they're gone. So same thing with Star Wars. I loved Qui Gon, and when they took out Qui Gon, I was like, dude, like come on.
Yeah.
I, even though Darth Maul's dead, once you start to see where the Sith are coming from and who's the leader of the Sith, then you're like, okay,
Is
I
Darth
really
Maul
don't
dead?
like. Right.
We'll find out as we keep
Right.
watching Chronological Clone.
Yeah. That's the most exciting thing ever. Like that's the most anticipated episode for me because I know, but
Yeah, yeah.
just because of everything I've read. But
All right. So that's how episode 3 ends, and it kind of ends up with, all right, we've taken out the cannon. The ship is still around, right? And Grievous is coming up with another plan, and that's where we kind of lead into destroy Malevolence, where, let me get that synopsis up and ready here. Padme and C-3PO are caught in the middle of a space battle. So, look, I was watching this with my wife, and she pointed out something that I'd already written in my notes. But this episode kind of starts off with Padme being like, "Hey, so glad the Chancellor gave me this intel to get here." And C-3PO is like, "Are you sure we could trust this intel from the Chancellor?" She's like, "Yeah, I love that guy." And then, boom, it's a trap. And nobody caught on to this?
right, yeah, no,
I know she's a little blinded because he's from Naboo as well, but oh my
yeah,
god, come on.
yeah. She's taking a book out of Grievous's. Like she's taking a page out of Grievous's book. I don't know, like it. I was like, come on, Padme's not that stupid. Like I don't understand.
I love that, like, 3PO is like, "Are you sure we can trust the Chancellor of the Republic?"
Yeah,
Like,
he's just like, got a
yeah,
bad
he
feeling
was
about
very like,
this.
C-3PO has got some political opinions, I guess. He's like, can we trust the deep state
Right.
government that is there? And Padme's
Yeah.
like, "Yes, silly, I'm part of the government." And it
Yeah.
was like, uh, uh, I thought it was funny because I wrote this down. I was like, "Oh my god!" And then I was talking to uh, my wife, after, like, I forget what happened, like I paused it or whatever, and she was like, "Yeah, so like the guy," the way she said, she's like, "So the Emperor is leading both sides," and I'm like, "Yes," and I'm like, she's like, "So they didn't catch on to that because Padme gets this intel and it turns into a trap." I was like, here's the way I excuse it. Probably the Chancellor will be like, "My bad. Somebody fed me bad information." He has probably somebody set up to be a fall guy on this, but just funny. And also, like, what we also always hear is that he's used the dark side of the Force to kind of cloud the vision of like the Jedi. I'm sure he could probably use that to kind of cloud Padme's suspicions if you want to just get into some like BS stuff. But funny, it starts off immediately that way. Now, I want to know, so far, have you kind of caught on to the trend with the show so far that, like, so far we got this 3 episode arc, right? But we've kind of focused on different characters in each episode.
Hmm.
But have you noticed, like, when Padme and 3PO get introduced to an episode that you're like, okay, so this is the Padme 3PO episode? Or do you think, like, okay, they're just in this one? Because whenever I've noticed now, like, once I saw Padme and 3PO, I was like, oh, that's right. Like, this is a specifically Padme 3PO episode.
Yeah, I feel like this show especially as soon as it introduces somebody, I'm like, okay, I know which arc we're in now. Like I know who this is going to focus on, and then I'm like, okay, so that means the 3 episodes are going to be centered around these characters. So for especially for the clones, like obviously, like the clones are so obvious. I will say the ones that are confusing, like you just don't pick up right away, are sometimes the Jedi because the Jedi clone episodes and Jedi episodes tend to like mesh together. Um,
Yeah, at times, yeah.
because it always seems like clone episodes are heavily like they start out with the Jedi Council talking. It's weird, like they're talking and then it turns into clone episodes. Because I guess you could say the last story arc was Jedi, but I would could also you could also argue that it's somewhat clone. But there's other ones that it's like okay, there's no doubt like this was a C-3PO and a Padme episode.
Yeah, because they get most of the focus here.
Yes.
And uh we get this whole silly thing when they're on the ship, right? And they're like looking for, and then like 3PO ends up on the train, right? He ends up on the train inside the Malevolence, and um yeah, they're looking for. One part I really liked is when Anakin and Obi-Wan are looking for Padme, and then they start hearing the blaster fire, and they're just like, "Oh, found her!" Like right there, and it's her and 3PO. And then once he gets with Padme, then Obi-Wan's tasked with finding 3PO. And just imagining Obi-Wan doing all of this trouble to try to find a droid is really funny. Um, and then kind of when they get to sneak their kiss when they go through like the tunnel
Yeah.
in the train.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm not talking about Obi-Wan and 3PO at this point. I'm talking about Anakin and Padme again. But just this episode was a little lighter than the last one, where it's a little darker.
Yeah.
Because it has the droids together. You have R2 running into 3PO and him being like, "Oh, so good to see you." And I just love anytime those droids are together. So while this episode was probably my least favorite of the arc, it had some bonuses of like, oh, okay, this is the droids. I love seeing the droids. We also got a nice shout out to episode 3 when Obi-Wan jumps down and runs into Grievous and says, "Hello there." So now we know that he says that it's like his line whenever he falls in front of Grievous. He's always like, "Hello there."
It's a nice way to introduce yourself.
Grievous is probably so pissed too. Like once it happens once, you're probably like, okay, like
Yeah.
he was a
All
little
right, dude.
too calm about running into me, right?
Right.
And then when it happens again, right before he dies in episode 3, he's probably like, I've heard him say this 50 times now. Every time we run into each other,
Right.
I gotta take this guy out. And he
Yep.
loses. Uh, yeah, just funny that this is now canon that this is just something Obi-Wan says to him all the time now, and not just a line from Episode 3. Anakin also had a really great line when he says, "I used to put droids together, but now I only tear them apart."
Mm-hmm.
Thought that was pretty badass.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't know. Anakin's always had pretty decent lines.
Yeah, like I hate sand, right?
Yeah. Right. It's coarse.
It's rough. It gets everywhere.
Yeah.
I agree with him on that, though. I do agree with him on sand.
Oh, sand sucks. It's the worst. Like when people go, "Do you like the beach?" I'm like, no, I don't. If it was just the ocean,
Exactly.
I'd be much more of a fan. If it was like a nice grassy area, I'd much prefer that.
Yeah, a
Not
nice
sand.
grassy knoll.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. Yeah. Made me move to Ireland.
no, I'm glad we're on the same page about sand. It is,
Yep.
anytime somebody's saying about the beach, like I don't go to the beach,
Yeah.
right? Like I just can't stand it. Can't stand it. The last time I probably went to a beach where I actually walked on sand probably would have been, oh my goodness, like a decade ago.
Mhm.
I just can't. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. It gets everywhere, like he says. I'm not a flip flop guy either, or a sandals guy,
Yeah.
so I don't like my feet. I'm not a foot guy. I am a guy that's like, I need my socks on even when I'm in my house. I need my
Yeah.
shoes on when I go outside. Like, yeah,
That's me.
I can't do it.
Yep. Totally agree.
I'm not a big water guy either, so I'm not a big like. I'd rather go to a pool than a beach.
Yes. Same.
And even then, I don't go to the pool that much.
Yeah. I guess you could say if you're not with me, then you're against me.
Yeah,
Then you're my enemy.
I know. I guess I am kind of dealing in some absolutes here. I guess, but
Right.
whatever.
And you know who only deals in absolutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So
Sorry
I
about.
have a little bit of trivia for you. I don't know if you know
Oh
this.
dear.
All right. No, you don't have to answer anything, but just a little bit of fun trivia.
Okay.
To hide that it was going to be, all right, spoiler alerts for The Mandalorian. Okay. To hide that season 2's finale was going to feature Luke, they decided, let's do it. Let's put Plo Koon and film this with Plo Koon's head for the scene where he goes and meets Grogu.
Really?
Which is amazing because Plo Koon is dead. Like he was
Yeah.
dead in Revenge of the Sith. So just a funny if like somebody did try to leak this, where they'd be like somehow like Plo Koon returned.
And there's a significant role that he plays in saving Grogu. Like that's the only reason he's alive
Yes,
is to save Grogu. He's got some kind of attachment to this.
and
To
then
the
meet Ahsoka again.
yeah.
There you go. There's a little bit of a connect. Yeah.
Right.
So and the reason why it was Plo Koon is because actually this is Dave Filoni's favorite Jedi, Plo Koon.
Plo Koon's awesome. We also see him Phantom Menace, isn't he? Flying a ship. Is that Phantom Menace? He's flying
What
a
was he?
ship.
No, I think he only appears in. I might be wrong. He might only appear in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
I could have swore he was
Now I have
in,
to.
flying a ship.
Let's look it up. Episode 1, Plo Koon. He did appear in Phantom Menace.
Hmm.
I think he just sat on the council though.
Oh, that's what it is. I know he's sitting somewhere.
He sits
Yes,
in a
that's
ship
exactly what it is.
in Revenge of the Sith. That's when he gets blown up.
Yep. Yep. I do remember now. It's him sitting in the council when they're sitting in
Yes.
a
Yep.
circle. Yep. I can
So
visualize.
again, once again, he's on the council, and Yoda's like, "Too bad, man."
And he's like the board member. Yeah, it'd be like, okay, I get it. He's not in your inner circle. Like this dude's in your inner circle. Like
Yeah.
you share, you're bumping elbows with him when you're eating.
And then
space
if I'm
food.
Anakin, I'm even more upset because I'm like, all right, now you don't want me to go get him, but then you won't grant me the rank of master if I get on the council.
Right,
They don't
exactly.
treat the council members good at all.
Right. There's no seniority. There's no
If I'm Anakin, maybe I
respect.
don't save him, and it's like now there's an opening.
I know. Well, that and maybe Anakin's like, there's a seat. No, or that, or maybe Anakin's like, do I really want to be on this council then? Like maybe that's why,
Yeah.
we've solved it. That's why he goes dark. It's not. It has nothing to do
He
with
watches how they treat Plo Koon. He's like, I can't handle this.
right. Maybe we've been on the wrong side of Star Wars history, guys.
He's like, are we the baddies?
Right? Are we?
Um, yeah. So that's just a little fun trivia there with Plo Koon.
That's cool though. I like that a lot.
All right. Well, I guess now just let me know about the whole arc as a whole.
Hmm.
Spoilers full. You can wrap it up for us. Where do you rank this on the weekly watch that we've done so far?
Oh. Hmm. That's tough because the droid one, or not the droid, the clone one was really good. With what
The
was that?
cadets, yeah.
Yes, that's really good. I'd say that's still number one in my heart. I'd say this one though is probably second, only because I love R2D2. Like I
Mm-hmm.
like I really like R2. The only thing I really have critique about is the way that Obi-Wan treats R2D2. Like,
Next
uh,
week.
is that next week?
Yeah, that's next week.
Okay, but yeah, no,
Spoiler alert for people listening.
yeah,
We're doing these back to back, so
yeah.
like it's
So yeah,
a
no,
little
that's
fuzzy.
yes.
It was a little fuzzy for me
Um,
earlier when I was talking about. I was trying to figure out which one I was talking about,
yeah,
and I was
I
like,
got
I
totally
don't know if
confused.
this is
I'm
right.
totally confused. Yeah. But no, I
So
this one
to refresh, we've had
hit refresh.
Cat
Okay.
and Mouse,
Yes.
Hidden Enemy. That was week 1. Second week we had the movie. Last week we had Clone Cadets, Supply Lines, and Ambush, and then this week the Malevolence Arc. Where would you rank it here?
Um. mm, I'd still say second.
Second.
Yeah, I really did like the cadets. Um, but this one's good. Like the clone one's really. I don't know. The more the clones are in it, I'm liking them more. I don't know why. I like the
Yeah.
Jedi a lot, but I don't know. I think there's something to a personal. I think because we're getting kind
People
of
that are
that.
not all powerful too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's more. I think it's the same reason I like the Mandalorian more than I like Jedi.
Right. Right.
Just because I think you get more substance. That's what it is. You get more substance with clones. They have feelings. They have emotions. They can go through this kind of. Whereas a
Well, and
Jedi's
what's
just stoic.
interesting too is that clones know that they shouldn't have unique personalities.
Hmm.
Right? They're always like, we're just
Yeah.
numbers,
Right.
but why do I feel this way? Right? And they're all different from Django Fett. So in
Yeah.
their mind, they're really thinking like, I know I shouldn't be feeling this, but I am.
Hmm.
And a Jedi is like, I know I shouldn't be feeling this, so I'm going to repress it.
That's a good point.
And
Yep.
then the droids are like, we're all the same.
Yep. No, that's a really good point. And I think it's kind of like that. Clones are, and maybe that's why they get. I mean, that's why they're upset. But like, they aren't just numbers. Although clones were really stupid in the in 456. Like I think they
Oh, they're
just
not clones in 456. So there you go. That's another
oh
thing.
they're not.
No, at that point they're already
They're
so
just
old they
stormtroopers.
phased out to regular recruits.
Well, that's stupid. See, I
Yeah.
don't know that. Yeah, well, that's dumb.
So that's why they're also not as good shots, I guess. But there you go.
Do we just get a clones like a? I know we get Clone Wars, but like, do we get why? Like when the clones finally are gone?
No, I think it might come up in Bad Batch, the show,
Okay.
because at that point they've kind of stopped using the. So, light spoilers. Bad Batch. If we are to continue this after Clone Wars, and if you want to
Yeah.
watch Bad Batch and Rebels,
Hmm.
we'll continue the chronological flow and watch Bad Batch next, even though it came out
Or
later,
after? Yeah.
because it literally picks up from Revenge of the Sith into the Empire.
Okay.
So like you kind of start seeing the shift of the Empire and stuff like that.
Okay. That
And
makes sense.
I think you would really like Bad Batch too because it does focus exclusively on the clones. So you
Cool.
get like just clones.
Okay. That makes sense then.
All right, yeah, I'd probably agree with you. I think this is probably ranked 2 or 3 of the week
Yeah.
so far because I think last week with Clone Cadet supply lines of ambush were the best so far, and mostly because of Clone Cadets being
Mhm.
so good. So, but yeah, so if anybody wants to share their thoughts on these batches episodes, do you like the Malevolence Arc? Let us know. Next week, we are diving into uh, our 5th week, which will start off with Rookies, Season 1, Episode 5. That is a sequel to Clone Cadets. So I'm really excited to see your thoughts on that. And then we have Season 1, Episode 6, Downfall of a Droid, and Season 1, Episode 7, Duel of the Droids. So that's where we are heading next week. A little bit of a lighter week on top of, on plot, I guess. But yeah, so thank you all for watching. You can follow us at podawakens on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I got to make sure I mention the TikTok, though I haven't posted there in a while. And Threads. So thank you all for watching and listening along. We'll catch you next week when we talk week 5.